Welcome to Funfamiliar Territory, an anime and or gaming podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. It's not what you know or what you don't know, it's how you play the game. So come on, get on our level, and transform into our world space. Our Funfamiliar Territory.
My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen.
Sorry, I worked out, so I might cough a little bit.
That's perfectly fine. What's most important right now, are you ready to Tropica Shine, Grant?
God fucking damn it.
Wait,
I'm so
wait,
mad
oh,
at you.
Shit. Sorry, okay. This is not our Tropical Rouge Precure episode. Damn, I was excited for that. Okay, that's right, we're doing something else. I'm gonna move my Precure notes. Hold on. I got the wrong notes out, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna throw these over, where's empty space? Here we go, okay. There we go. Okay, all the Precure notes are out of the way. Thankfully, my notes on what we're actually doing today are quite slim in comparison. So today, we're gonna go ahead and do, Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair.
Welcome to Dangan Island. Huge panic at the heart-throbbing school trip?
Or as we'll refer to it throughout this review instead, Danganronpa 2. Because, you know, old habits die hard, so Danganronpa it is.
Alright, so, let's talk about Danganronpa 2, the worst one.
I mean, we are looking at a sum total of 3 games, where we've elected not to do Ultra Despair Girls, and for factoring into this review. Nor are we going to bring in the anime this time. We were thinking about doing it, but there's a lot of it, and skimming it's just not that interesting, so,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, so we're just gonna pretend like that doesn't exist, and we're just gonna cover the game, Danganronpa 2. Yeah, so, although I'll agree right off the bat with Grant that this is my least favorite of the games, I'll admit, going back through all the materials and studying up for this episode, since we played this way back last summer, I've got, like, some nostalgia for it. I don't know if you call it nostalgia if it's that recent, but, like, I get, like, warm fuzzy feelings. I'm like, oh, yeah, this game did have its merits. But I also, I do remember playing the actual game and being like, fuck this. So
I think Danganronpa 2 has possibly the strongest cast in terms of how much you enjoy them, how interesting they are. I felt like a lot of times with the Danganronpa 2 cast, I was more interested in doing their free time events than I was the Danganronpa cast, and even Danganronpa V3. And I really like V3's cast, but I think that Danganronpa 2's cast is the strongest. However, I think the plot is the weakest, and I also think it has the most shitty stuff in it.
Yeah, I won't agree on best cast, but I will agree that this is, on paper, a big step up in all sorts of factors compared to Danganronpa 1. So, although our tastes differ, I agree on, you know, where you're at here. And it's tight, you know, so yeah, that's generally how I feel on this, but what is Danganronpa 2?
So Danganronpa 2 is a 2012 visual novel murder game. And just like the first one,
you murder people.
It follows the same plot structure. You arrive in a secluded area. Someone's got to murder someone, and if they get away with it, they escape. But if they don't get away with it, they are executed. And of course, if they get away with it, everyone else is executed. So it's a lot more like the first one than it is the third one. Mm-hmm. Except instead of being in a school, you're in a weird-ass island. Now, this island starts out as a school field trip, and you are whisked away by another bunny mascot named, what was her name before Monami?
Usami,
yeah. And she is a bunny instead of a bear. And she's like, hey, we're gonna become friends, and once everybody's friends, we'll leave. And then, fucking Monokuma shows up and ruins the whole thing. Oh darn, time to murder people.
I'll leave the rest up to you.
It has a big summer vibe, which is fun.
Yeah.
I think the setting is a lot more fun than the first one. It's a lot weirder. There's a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Suspension of disbelief that you kind of have to put with it. And it makes sense by the end of the game why it's so weird. But I think we should talk about the characters, since this game is fairly character-driven.
Yeah, sure. So basically the way we're going to go about this is we're just going to do a tier list like we did before. And that's how we're going to sort of navigate our cast. So, Grant, would you like to start at the top or the bottom?
Let's start at the bottom.
Okay. So, do you want me to list off the tiers really quickly?
Yes.
Okay. So, here we go. So, our top tier is the worthy tier. It's not S tier Sakura like we had in Danganronpa 1. Unfortunately, no character is able to, accomplish that Herculean task. However, a couple characters get close, so, there's that.
I will say, real quick,
Uh-huh.
quick disclaimer, this is these characters without their free time events. Looking back
Yes.
at this, there are a couple characters in here that I think would be bumped up based off of their free time events and bumped down based on their free time events. But these free time events have to be treated as non-canon for the most part because it's not something that you automatically get to see. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. You cannot see all of the free time events during the game, no matter, how efficient you are. You're maybe going to see all the events of like 4 characters maximum if you're really planning things out. And even then, because characters die throughout the extent of the game, that means that some people have to be done early. It's it's a whole optimization problem,
and some people have to be done post game, where you get the island mode where nobody dies, and that literally just exists to get the free time events. So the game doesn't recognize that you've done the free time events, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So let's go down these tier lists.
Okay, yes. So of course, like I said, top tier, worthy tier. Right underneath that is sure, which is to say, this character's good to go. They're not the top tier, but they're still basically we don't feel the need to touch them or make adjustments. Their character is good. We like them. Underneath that is good concept, easy fixes. These are characters who mostly nail it, but there's this a little thing we just bothers us, or an issue that doesn't get resolved. And so right underneath those top tiers, then we get into some of the more middling tiers. Good concept, needs TLC. So great idea for this character, but again, we need some revisions in how they're treated until they really feel right. Or there's just some weird shit thrown in there that we need to untangle. There's the yawn category. They don't really inspire anything, or they're not contributing anything, so they're not harming the plot by being there, but they're also not bringing anything to the table. They're functionally useless in a way. Underneath this tier is, this is my trash, which means
my favorite tier.
Yeah, it's kind of my favorite tier too, because it's the guilty pleasure tier. It's basically this character kind of sucks, but this character also kind of fucks. It's like there's something about this character that's just either hilarious or cool or really interesting, but there's garbage that's just encapsulating that, or the garbage is on the inside. There's garbage in there, but it's not it's not so offensive to us that we won't turn it away. Beyond that sick-minded tier, we have concept needs serious therapy, which just means, yeah, from the beginning, this idea just kind of doesn't work for this plot. This character doesn't really fit in. They don't contribute. We need to go to the very bottom of who they are if we want them to do something in this plot. After that, basically one of our lowest tiers is no. And that is reserved for clearly just a character that we don't want to rewrite in any sense. It's just no, we just throw this character out and you make a different character. And then finally a new tier, which was not in our Danganronpa 1 tier list, which is actual honest to god underage fan service. A tier which we wish we didn't have to make.
Yes. And why Danganronpa 2 is the worst.
Yes. So,
let's start there. Yeah, let's start there, because I feel like this needs to be talked about quickly.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So who is the actual honest to god underage fan service character?
It's Mikan.
Poor Mikan.
Poor Mikan. You want to take this one?
I do. So to prep for this one, we decided that because the writing for the free time events is sometimes more interesting than the actual story, we would learn all of the free time events. And I will say that there are some characters that I think are well beyond what we rated them initially because of their free time events. Mikan is the only one that I would say that I read is worse.
Why only me?
So Mikan's character in the game is the subject to just straight bullying from some of the other characters, is the only character who, without going into like those like weird pervy events, is the only character that will fall and, oh no, it's an upskirt, oh no, she's naked, and people harass her for it. And so her free time event basically says, yeah, that's been happening all my life. I've been bullied and abused for my entire life. And with the way that Mikan's character ends, which we'll talk about when we talk about the cases, it doesn't get resolved. It's just terrible. It's so bad. I hate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually went back and I read these two for Mikan, and it really is just like about her being submissive out of pure anxiety, like, and conditioning. Like, Mikan as a character needs therapy fast, and clearly she's not going to get that in this game. Worse, as Grant said, she's literally getting bullied more in this game. And her free time events don't resolve that. They unpack it a little bit, but that's as good as she gets. For already being a fan service vehicle as a character, Mikan just gets nothing, and she brings the game down as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you ready to move into the character who just does not look like a human?
Oh, yes. Category no, we have Teru Hanamura.
Nonsense!
So, I actually went through and I did explore Teru's free time events. So, I'll say, like, I had a similar experience to Grant, that overall the free time events generally make these characters better. I kind of want to say that for Teru, and I kind of don't. So here we go. Teru's free times basically give the same background that he gives in the first trial. So it tells about his humble home life and how he's kind of projecting and attempting to seem like a fancier or more sophisticated or wealthy person than he actually is. And that's fine. Like, eventually you break through that facade, and essentially he sort of embraces his more like low down roots. It's kind of like actually it feels a lot like Hifumi Yamada from Danganronpa 1, where the character doesn't so much like change, but they do open up to you and let you in. That being said, there's also just some weird shit. The first interaction you have with Teruteru, he's trying to sexually solicit Sonya Nevermind. Teruteru just literally tries to convince Sonya to like give him head, and it's fucking weird and
super weird.
It's like the first thing you get out of this character, basically. It's tasteless. All of the innuendo that he gives,
it's funny because he's the ultimate chef.
Yeah.
And God. By the way, Mikan's the ultimate nurse. We probably should mention that.
Oh yeah. So ultimate nurse and then ultimate chef. And so Teruteru is just kind of grating all the time because it's always finding its way back to innuendo.
From what I've gathered, I watched a little bit of the anime just to kind of get a rundown. I skimmed it. He's not better in the anime, so that's pretty terrible.
Yeah. It doesn't help that Sonya is a foreigner, so she's from a fictional country, and so him trying to get that out of her is like clearly he's like trying to take advantage of her, and that's awful. There's other things in his free time events that are kind of nasty. So like for example, he mentions that his siblings are training to be escorts, and that
what?
they're basically like he's like, oh, they're capitalizing on their youth to earn money, and they're trained to be escorts, and it's like, what the fuck? And
That's
it's like,
fucked.
okay, maybe it's like, oh, I don't know what he's actually talking about. Maybe he's also just being weird in how he describes it. But then Hajime also has like a monologue line to ask, like, aren't they underage? And so it's like, okay, great. Fuck. No, that's weird.
Fucked.
Yeah, and that's not Teruteru, that's his family, but like, it's still fucked. I'm gonna attach it to Teruteru regardless.
Keep him down there.
No.
So Teruteru gets to be in the bottom of the bucket, only above Mikan, because Mikan actually is fan service. Teruteru voices like the fan service. Blah, blah, blah.
And Mikan as a character isn't below Teruteru. Mikan as a device for the writers to do fucked up shit is below Teruteru.
Yeah, Mikan as an object.
Yeah, which is all she is basically in this game. So I did the free time events for the next two, which is concept needs serious therapy. A lot of times for the ones that are in here, they're mostly characters that don't last very long, but in this case, one of them does it, and the other one lasts the entire time. And that is Owari, the ultimate gymnast, and Mahiru, the ultimate photographer.
Yeah, we should probably say full names now that I think about it, because I watched the like a subtitled version of this way back when it first launched. Probably I think it was unofficial, like Danganronpa 1, and as a result, I read a lot of the characters' last names. Which are going to be flipped, and so blah blah blah. We'll try to say the full names here, so that way it makes more sense when we mix them up later. Because I'll probably flip back and forth. So just a little bit of a recap. We had Mikan Sumiki, and then we had Teruteru Hanamura, and now we have Akane Owari and
Mahiru Koizumi.
Yes.
So we'll start with Mahiru. So Mahiru is the ultimate photographer, and when you kind of first get an interaction with, she's very headstrong. She's very like bold and like up in your face, and it's actually kind of refreshing. But the problem is she is somehow both a misandrist and a misogynist at the same time.
You are a boy, right?
She thinks that all the boys in the the cast need to protect the weak females, which she is what she says. And so her entire concept is that she hates everybody except for one other character, and that is Hyoko's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get
And
her.
so, because of her standoffishness, that's the word I'm looking for. She's really hard to like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you can't have a character that does that. It's just we, as the player, don't get to see any character development. Because, spoiler alert, she dies. And
Yeah.
so essentially, they created this baseline character that we don't get to see any changes or nuances. And so her therapy basically comes from the fact that we don't get to see anything. And she solely exists in the plot of the game as a barrier.
This character needed some kind of resolve. She has like this tough love thing going on where you're like, oh, she's gonna turn over, or we're gonna warm up to her, and then she dies, like you mentioned.
Yep.
So it's just,
and that's pretty consistent with a lot of our what we thought of in the first game too. But her free time event, it gives you some of that. But once again, I don't believe you can get her free time event without doing post game content. So you find out that her mom is a war photographer. And because of that, her mom always has depressing pictures. And she's always trying to focus on the darkness of the world. And as you get further and further into Mahiru's love of photography, you find out that all she takes pictures of is people smiling. Because she wants to bring happiness to the world through her pictures. It's pretty shallow. But it's neat. And it gives you a little bit more depth to her character. Now, something I've noticed when reading the free time events, this game has a theme of shitty home lives.
that's a good point, yeah.
Like, very complex, very, like, morally gray parents and people they lived with. And she even talks about that, how her mom didn't really, she couldn't get this love from her mom. And it's good. It works, but once again, you don't get to see anything. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about Mahiru before we move on?
I want to make a side comment, just a tangent that might carry with us throughout the rest of this review. So, this game, compared to Danganronpa 1, it feels like the cast is sort of a different shape to it. Danganronpa 1 felt like you had a bunch of main characters that survived to the end, and all the side characters kind of got clipped out, Like, if you had a sliding scale of, like, side character to main character, a lot of the people you could reasonably expect to not make it end up making it, with maybe the exception of, like, Yasuhiro Hagakure, who's definitely, like
A side character.
Yeah, he's, like, side character to the max.
Yeah.
This game, on the other hand, feels like it's a lot more dense with side characters. And to me, Mahiru felt like a main character who got cut off. I don't really have, like, a good way to describe anything other than feeling on that, but that's just, when I first watched this game, I was shocked that she got killed off. The other people I knew who were also watching felt the exact same way. It's like, oh, okay. And, it just, it feels like, not necessarily that, like, a main character has to live to the end, but perhaps the fact that she didn't get development makes her feel like an estranged main character to me. I don't know.
Obviously.
I think that makes sense. I know I've talked about this. I don't know if I talked about it on our last episode, but Danganronpa likes to, tall characters, buff characters, the characters that are the furthest thing from looking like an actual human, they don't tend to make it.
Yeah.
And this game is no different. But this game also puts I have a rule: if the character is too boring, they die. Like Leon was too boring. But if the character's too interesting, they also die. Or too out there, or too weird. This game has a lot of characters that fit right in between too interesting and too boring. And it made it a little harder to predict who's going to live and who's going to die.
Yeah.
Speaking of boring characters, Owari.
You?
Akane Owari. So, Akane is the ultimate gymnast, and you wouldn't know that. Because she's more of like the ultimate fighter, or the ultimate angry person. Her character's very, very, very boring. She, spoiler alert, makes it to the end. And I always forget that she made it to the end.
Now, is that because you forgot she survives, or is it because you forget that she exists as a character?
Because she exists as a character. Like, even in the final cast, she brings the least to the table.
You serious?
Her only character has to deal with another character, and it's good, but it helps the other character more than it helps her. She exists in the same space that like Sakura Ogami fits, where she wants to fight Monokuma. She's a shit starter. But she's so much less interesting. She almost has... I can't remember a part in any case where she is a major player.
She does find some clues in the fourth case, because Nekomaru gets taken out. So
that's right.
She gets all fired up and she starts, actually participating. But then after that, she just kind of reverts to being kind of useless again. At least I can't remember anything that she was like really giving, to the cast.
Well, oh boy, does her free time event give a lot more depth. Now, you can argue that free time events to these characters are a way for the game to write in more complex characterizations, and I'd agree with that. The problem is that the game cannot react to who you worked with. So you never get to see any of this actually develop to their character. It's just flat out ignored half the time. And hers is no different. And she was raised in a foster system. And she had to do odd jobs for people. And there's also a weird side story of some pervy shit that I don't want to get into with her character.
Had a feeling.
But essentially, her character becomes really good at parkour as a way to, A, run away from people, and B, get from job to job to support her, 7 siblings. Once again, bad home life, a little bit more complex, doesn't really go anywhere. Her serious therapy is that she just needs more of a character. She doesn't exist past what she is.
Yeah, her idea is kind of all over the place. She's the one who's the glutton. She eats the most. She's athletic, but in such a non-specific way that it, uncharacteristically for Danganronpa, kind of leaves her without things to do. There aren't that many times where they just need someone who's, uber strong, and even so, then they also have Nekomaru for that, so, you could say that she gives a lot more oomph to Nekomaru's character, but it doesn't feel like it goes two ways. It feels like she's stapled onto him. And even in the game, she spends a lot of time just kind of blubbering over him, especially when he's dead.
And spoiler alert for Nekomaru, what's funny is when he does die, they make a little tiny robot of him, and she holds onto it, which might be cute, but it still serves as a crutch to her character. Yeah, which is wild.
She never gets to be her own character without Nekomaru.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Ready to level up? Here we go.
This is my trash. Who are our 2 trash characters?
We have Nagito Komaeda, and we have Hiyoko Sayonji.
Because we did Hiyoko in the game, because right. I was curious if she had any actual depth to her character, or if she was just literally angry all the time.
Yeah, so let's start with her. So,
turns out she's angry all the time.
Yeah.
Too bad you're so stupid and boring and unpopular. Your life is meaningless.
Her free time event sucks.
Yeah, it just kind of confirms that, yeah, she's got a bad home life. Essentially, like, bad dad syndrome. So, her dad tends to be absent, and so therefore, she's not getting the attention she needs, and so then she fills that gap by being, cloying to everyone else or outright being abusive. So she's a little more tolerable because you get that sort of like that sympathy connection that Mahiru had with her. You get that as a player. But that also doesn't excuse the fact that she is just absolutely like just mean.
You trashy skank!
Like she's
She's
really
so
mean.
And it's one of those things. The reason that she is my trash is
And
because despite if she wasn't mean to one of the problems I have with her is she's specifically mean to Mikan, which sucks because of Mikan's character as a character.
Yeah, she's punching
But
down.
she's also mean to everybody, and that's what I love about her. She's the first time we've had a character who has looked at Danganronpa as like a bunch of just shitty people and just been like, hey, stop being a bitch. And I think the time that I learned to like her, because I hated her when I first saw her, but Soda said something and I said, man, what a bitch. And then it cut to her and she said, stop being a bitch. And I'm like, that's it. That's my trash.
Yeah. It feels like the cast of Danganronpa is a circus and Sayonji's in the front row seats throwing popcorn at them. Like, and those are the parts that are gratifying. Not necessarily satisfying. You still feel bad about it. It's just extremely rude. But she's the most vulgar out of everybody. And some of those like swears are just absolute pinpoint accuracy. And that's where like the trash just suddenly hits so good. Yeah, she's a tough cookie. Okay, moving on past her, we have quite possibly just the how do I even
It's fine if you don't understand.
He's not really. He has another ultimate. He's not just the ultimate lucky student. He's also the ultimate meme.
Yeah. And that's what makes Nagito Komaeda difficult. Because he's more than just what he is in the game. He's a fucking phenomenon. And so like, we have to kind of... We can't pretend like what Komaeda is out in the like... the zeitgeist of the internet. Like, that affects...
We can't pretend that fingers in his ass doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
We cannot pretend it doesn't
because
exist.
As far as we know, the people who are still, like, creating merchandise of Komaeda also know that exists. Because there's that 10th anniversary figurine of Komaeda, and the background image that they used for it looks like the Undertale Sans hallway. And good God, who would fucking think that someone would make that connection?
You gotta look at the big picture, you know?
Yeah, so this is a fucking lot. You know what this is? This is like in cartoons when someone like they open a suitcase and it just like never ending starts like stuff just starts rocketing out of it because it was overstuffed. Or it's like a clown rag that just keeps going, right? Like that's Komaeda. So God, what do we even talk about? Okay.
I think we should talk about Komaeda's, since Komaeda is fairly prominent in the story. He's the most prominent that we've talked about so far, and I feel like we'll talk about him more as we go through cases.
Yeah. This guy's a main character.
Yes, he fills the role that like Genocide Jack and Byakua filled in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
He's a shit starter.
Yeah.
The only difference is he doesn't hide the fact that he's there to start shit.
Mm-hmm.
He is the ultimate lucky student, just like Makoto Naegi.
Mm-hmm.
But
and trivia
unlike...
from the wiki, you can rearrange his name to say Makoto Naegi da, which is I am Makoto Naegi. So
which has no meaning.
Doesn't mean anything. It's hilarious.
So what's wild about him is he is the catalyst for so much of this story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only time, well, because there's only 2 lucky students, and Naegi was barely a lucky student.
Mm-hmm.
But Komaeda uses his luck to the absolute highest degree. It's
really creative.
Yeah, it's a very good writing device. And like he's basically part of every case. So we'll talk about his cases. But besides that, he's both likable because he's kind of weirdly good-hearted when you first meet him, but you love to hate him. You love to hate him.
Yeah.
Because he's right. And that's it. He's right about the worst shit.
Are you praising me?
That's super it. Yeah. His free time events are basically that. It's just an extension of the same stuff you hear in the story, which is like, you know, basically to say this grandstanding, like, hope and despair stuff. That's seriously all that's on his mind. It's not an act. It's like it's buried deep in there. And some of it's nonsense and some of it's not. There's a part where he he tells you a bunch of tragic things about his life, like about how he was in an airplane and the airplane got hijacked, but then a meteorite, essentially like the size of a fist, hit the plane and killed the hijacker, but also both of his parents.
What the Jesus.
Like, yeah, but then he goes on and hints that maybe he was lying about that, and Hajime is just like, what the fuck? And then it never really, I don't know if you ever even really know. But that's his whole character. It's just that kind of suspense all the time. And, like, it's exhausting sometimes. But he's so good at starting shit that it's relatively one of the more delicious things that this game has on offer.
Yep, and we'll talk about that when we talk about cases.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason why people love Komaeda for his character not being a meme. Like, just he
was liked first, then a meme.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. So let's leave it at that for now. We can always come. I'm sure Komaeda is going to come back up again. Oh, by the way, if you like the idea of, like, someone using their luck, essentially, like, exploiting it in order to, like, make things go their way, they've, like, factored it into plans and things, I recommend go dig up and watch Irresponsible Captain Tyler. It's essentially that concept as, like, a whole show. So, okay, moving on.
Jan. I actually wouldn't put anybody but Hajime in this after reading Free Time Events.
Ah.
But we'll start with Hajime. Fuck Hajime.
We'll start with Hajime.
Hajime
does mean begin in Japanese.
It does. God damn it. Hajime's the worst protagonist.
Crap! What does that mean?
Yeah, people might not like to hear that. But we don't see in Hajime what other people see in him. I know I have more insight to that now. Like, seriously, I do, but, like, I also still would put him at, the absolute bottom in terms of protagonists.
I do want to preface something about this episode, because we're going to talk a lot of trash on a lot of characters. Mm-hmm. And since I finished Danganronpa V3, I've been interacting with watching the Danganronpa Reddit community, mm-hmm. Which, by the way, is weirdly wholesome.
Mhm.
They love to hate on each other's characters. But we'll talk about people liking, like, everybody having a favorite character when we talk about Danganronpa V3. But I feel like we have to finish all of Danganronpa before we talk about the cultural impact that it's had.
Mhm.
But Hajime sucks ass.
He's just, yeah. I remember when I was first, like, getting into Danganronpa 2, I was looking up info about it. And it mentions, like, oh, you have a new protagonist. His name's Hajime Hinata. And they described that he was more assertive than Makoto. And what I realize now is what that means is he's more plain. I kind of wonder if, like, he's a better self-insert as a result. Because Makoto is definitely, like, a special kind of, like, pushover. But Hajime's not. But he is just so middle of the road that he just kind of ends up not having, like, any... It's hard to describe him with traits without somewhere else sort of contradicting or unseating that somewhere else in the plot. Like, no matter what compliment you can pay Hajime, there's somewhere else in the plot that suggests he's not really like that.
Yes.
It's complicated in the most simple way. I don't know.
Enough. I don't care about that anymore.
I mean, it's one of those things where the most interesting part about Hajime is that he actually isn't Hajime all the way through, which means Hajime sucks. But I will say there is something... His interactions with the characters are better than Neigi, I think.
Real?
And if I played Danganronpa 1 again, I might think Hajime is better than Neigi, but I haven't, so I don't care.
Damn it!
Yeah. Do you want to explain why Hajime isn't always Hajime?
He's ultimate despair. He's like the catalyst for the ultimate despair.
Mm-hmm. Izuru Kamakura.
And so that's revealed at the end that he was actually, like, brainwashed to be ultimate despair. But Danganronpa 2 has a pretty whack story.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to explain it as we explain cases, or it's going to be all over the place.
Yeah.
S-
Suffice to say that you don't ever really become Izuru Kamakura. Like, there's, like, a small stint of it in the last case. But... So for that same reason, I almost feel like that's not a character either. So Hajime is Hajime, and Hajime is boring.
Yes.
He's less boring when you know that he is Izuru Kamakura, and people will sort of make hints to that in their free time. People pick up on things about Hajime that just sound kind of boring at first, where it's like, oh, Hajime, you know, you're very this or that. They'll point out, like, you're kind of, you know, a stand-up person, you know, or you tend to have a weird charisma with people, which then makes sense, like, oh yeah, that's how he's ultimate despair, you know, that he kind of weaves his way into people's lives and then, you know, draws out the problems. But he's not that in this game. That's only described. So him as a character, I don't get it. Boring.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about Byakuya again, but this time it's not Byakuya.
Mm-hmm.
He is plus size Byakuya.
Yeah, so this is not Byakuya Togami. This is question mark?
That's right.
Yeah, this is the ultimate imposter who doesn't have a name.
Mm-hmm.
In the story, it's pretty bad. But once again, it's kind of bad because he dies first. Oops. And he dies because of Kamaida's ultimate luck. But his free time events, holy shit. I was reading these today, and I got, like, misty-eyed.
Rejoice.
So, his free time events, he talks about the problematic elements of the Togami family, the family that he's pretending to be. And essentially, it talks, and you don't know if he's lying or if this is something that actually happens, which it probably is something that actually happened to Byakuya, because he is pretending to be Byakuya, and he's really good at pretending. And essentially, the head of the Togami family just has a bunch of kids with a bunch of different men or women, and then they compete to be the next head of the Togami family. And it talks about how he had to rise through the ranks to become the head of the Togami family. But as you delve deeper into his free time event, there's one in the free time event 3 where he mentions chicken, and it's like they're talking about part 2. And he's talking about why people prefer different kinds of meats. And he said it shouldn't matter. Chicken's not less than steak. I don't get why people think that. And you're like, that's weird. That's a weird thing to say. And then on the last one, the last free time event, he asks, do you like me? And if you say, I like you, he goes, how do you feel about Byakuya Togami? What if I wasn't a Togami? What if I never had my birthright, my name, or my ability? What if I was more handsome and more disagreeable? Would you still feel the same way about me now? And then Hajime says, well, even if there was another Byakuya Togami, he's not the one I know. I know you. And he says, this man was born with nothing. No name, no birth certificate, no family. He had nothing. He was nothing. The only way for him to become something was to lie. And he lied to the entire world. And then you say, I'm your friend. And he goes, I like you. The Byakuya I know always says you in a condescending way, right? And Byakuya in this goes, you're right. You're absolutely right. The Byakuya you know. And then he says, once we get out of here, I have something to tell you. It's great. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's solid shit right there.
Because it's all about, it's something that is not explored in the main story. And to be fair, someone had to die first, and him dying first does leave a little bit air of a mystery. But with that free time event, I think he's a great character.
Yeah,
I think he's so
I would
good.
say put him up in sure.
Yeah, me too.
Push him up there. Because all that was in between before then was he just never got time, and so now he did.
Yep. I will say one of my favorite jokes that we made while playing with this was making this Byakuya, self-love Byakuya, where he always talked about, because he is a little less shitty than actual Byakuya, and he always says he cares about everybody. It's really good. I really liked that.
He's one of the first people to put his foot down and say, all right, I'm not letting anyone die.
Yes.
And that's essentially the axiom for the first case. So.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So let's move on to Kazuichi Soda.
Yo!
Also yawn. Why did we put him in the yawn category? I know why.
I almost don't remember, which I guess is ironic.
Right.
Yeah.
Soda is the ultimate mechanic. And he doesn't really get to use it too much.
The fourth case, that's about it.
Yeah, his main ability is that he's the ultimate simp for Sonya.
I already know.
He spends half of his lines just talking about how much he loves Sonya, never mind. It's not good. It's not it's not super problematic either. Because it's not like he's not like Taro who's trying to solicit Sonya. He's just oh my god, isn't Sonya great? She's wonderful. I love her. And then it's not reciprocated. He's not bad. I think he's yawn because he's not bad. His free time event makes him a little bit better. He basically talks about the reason that he looks like he does is he, once again, had a bad home life. And they were poor. and they couldn't go on field trips, so he's really excited about this field trip. And then one of his best friends like told on him for cheating, and he didn't want people to approach him anymore. He didn't want people to think that he was like approachable, so that's why he dyed his hair pink and like puts on makeup to look scary. I will say I do like that, because when you first see Soda, you're like, oh god, this guy's gonna be like edgy and mean, and he's not. He's actually fairly nice to you throughout the entire game. He does have a little trivia that anything he tries to fix just turns into a vehicle. he talked about like how he took apart his alarm clock and it ended up being like a little motorized like device that moved around, and he's like, I don't know how I do it.
Engines revving.
I think that's fun.
I think he kind of neutralizes himself. So, for example, like he has kind of this like punk aesthetic going on, but it also doesn't exactly match who he is, and he doesn't start standoffish either. Like he did that in his past, but now he's just kind of just an approachable person. Yeah. You know?
He's not yawn in a bad way. I think he's yawn in that you need a character to be the neutralizer.
Yeah.
He doesn't start shit. He doesn't really contribute too much, but he talks to people and he's a good friend, and I think that's fine. It's not interesting, but it's fine.
Yeah. He feels like the kind of side character that's meant to make it all the way through to the end. At least he did to me. Yeah,
and he does. He's like the Hagakure of this one.
Yeah. Well, I might say that Akane is more of that, because she's just like, she has the brick level intelligence.
Listen up. The emptier your head, the more dreams you can stuff inside it, you know?
You know, and so it's like, and I know that's insulting, but like, so is her character, so...
he's more like the Hina, right? Like the neutral ground character who just kind of exists to be like the regular one.
You know what? That's super right, because Hina also spent a lot of her time fawning over Sakura. So here it's more transparent with him, and it's more annoying. But at the very least, Sonya also just straight up tells him no. It doesn't stop him, and that's bad. But it could be worse given this cast. So relative terms, yeah.
I think in the anime they actually are a couple, or at least more likely to be a couple before the events of this.
Yeah.
So it could be a carryover from that, but it's still not interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So, we're in the top.
Up.
Yeah, we're in the top parts.
Yeah, so these are characters that we generally are more favorable to. And so we start off with Peko Pekoyama.
What a fun name. What a fucking fun name.
I know.
And what of it?
Her whole kind of thing is that she has this steely appearance, but so many other factors about her are very soft. So she gets, she's kind of bashful, depending on what's going on. In her free time events, it's revealed that she really loves like fluffy animals. She just wants to pet them and hug them.
Relatable.
Yeah. And basically the whole trajectory of her free time events is that she's trying to learn to smile better. She realizes that in Mahiru's photos, she's the only one that's not smiling. And so that's kind of what she's trying to do. She's trying to learn how to smile, whether it's trying to get Hajime to tell her jokes, or, taking tips from other people. Hiyoko tells her to put her fingers in the corners of her mouth and hold them, and essentially like an old like playground trick thing. Like you say a phrase while your lips are stretched and it sounds all wrong, but essentially what it culminates in is her asking you how she can ask out Fuyuhiko. She doesn't say his name, but it's pretty obvious. And it wouldn't be that early in the game, because, she essentially, like, that all gets revealed as she's about to get executed for murder. In some ways, it almost doesn't feel like the character in the free time events is the same one who would just kill for Fuyuhiko. unwarranted, but she is, I don't know. I think that they could do a better balancing act between the soft sides of her and the cold sides of her. There's also some issues just where, like, they have, like, a weird sort of infrequent recurring thing about her and, like, toilet humor. Or, like, in the first case, she ends up, like, just spending, like, a lot of time on the toilet or something. I don't know. She and Nekomaru are sort of like the scat humor characters randomly in the game. And it's not often, but it's weird that it happens more than once, from in my memory, right? Like, additionally, it kind of feels like they needed someone to kill, and so she kind of fills that role. And she does kill Mahiru basically just based on history. Almost in an antithesis of what this game is. She discovers with Fuyuhiko from a planted arcade machine that essentially Mahiru was part of a scandal that got Fuyuhiko's sister killed in the past, and so basically Fuyuhiko arranges a meeting to talk with her about it, and before they can even talk, Peko cuts Mahiru down. So again, it feels like she needs more time or more something given to her, and she's just not getting it. So close, yep. She's not a character, like, she's a character I wanted to see on screen, but I needed more of her to feel more firm on what kind of character she is, right?
Yep, I agree. I think her relationship with Fuyuhiko is pretty good, but we'll talk about that when we talk about Fuyuhiko.
Yeah.
Well, obviously.
Next rung up, good concept, easy fixes. So these are both my characters, I think. So, Nekomaru and Sonia get to take this category. So let's start with Sonia Nevermind.
Most tight.
So Sonia is a foreigner from a different country. She's kind of like a Japanese weeb. She'll, essentially, drop hints about, like, oh, I've watched these J-dramas, or, etc. Japanese trivia. She'll kind of explode out with, and that's really fun. In general,
what's her ultimate talent? We didn't talk about her ultimate or Peko.
I forgot. I've been forgetting. So we didn't talk about hardly anyone's ultimate talents, did we?
Oh, he didn't. Okay, we missed Saionji.
Saionji is the ultimate traditional dancer. Yeah. Hajime Hinata is the ultimate. He doesn't know. He forgot. Peko is the ultimate swordswoman. Katana wielder. Kendo, whatever it is. I don't remember which one they gave.
I think she's just the ultimate swordsman. I think that's all it is.
Yeah. And so now we're caught up. Woo! And so Sonia Nevermind is the ultimate princess.
That is right.
So I'd say, like, she's a better version of the whole, like, fish out of water character. It doesn't feel too much like they're trying to make her exotic unless you go to her free time events, and then they're doing more of that. Yeah, but in essence, like, she's basically Starfire from Teen Titans. That's
You're
it.
so right. I think one of the things I really like about Sonia is near the end, she becomes basically like the ultimate jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever, like, something needs to be done, she's like, oh, I know how to do this, or oh, this is something I learned when I was a princess.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really use her as she never uses her talent because it's a stupid talent.
Yeah, her talent is being a princess, which comes out in her character, like, where she'll suddenly be very dominating, or very assertive, and she'll accidentally tell someone to kneel, or, like, heed her command or whatever. But that it's passive, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. But she's fun. She's a fun character. She's one of the final survivors, and it's good. Her easy fixes that I think is just maybe give her a little bit more edge. It's really weird how soft this character is at times.
Mm-hmm. Though she does have the best line in the game, which is, "Jesus shits, you son of a bitch."
God damn it, all to hell!
That's right.
And that is just incredible.
Yeah. So do you think that her free time events elevate her to Yasher, or just kind of keep her where she is?
Eventually, yes. So they kind of like start meh, and then there's like a spike where it's like, oh my god, that's really good, and then it just kind of okay. So it begins by describing Novoselic culture, essentially that's the fake country she comes from. And there's like, you know, a couple new sexual innuendos they throw in there. And then eventually it's the point where she kind of starts figuring out with you that her composure doesn't mean that she's not freaked out. Like, she is terrified like everybody else, but essentially she is worked up the ability to hide that. And so now that part's automatic. You know, the face she's putting on is not like even intentional. It's just that, you know, she's good at appearing like she's not bothered by things. But like Hajime looks down and notices like her hands are shaking. And he tries to like hold her hands and stop them from shaking or something, but like they just can't stop. And that's really like, that's good. That's
good.
And a step forward for her character. There's a part where she just, you know, has a full breakdown cry. And Hajime comments that it's like one of the first things she's been able to do that feels very, very normal. And, you know, that's also weirdly healthy for Danganronpa to talk about, you know? So yeah, those bits are really good things that, you know, for her character. But I agree. It just feels like something needs to be done a little bit before I feel totally comfortable with her character. She feels too often like the butt of like innuendo and prying. The whole fact that they have like a swimsuit scene and it's all building up to what's Sonya gonna be wearing, that just kind of shows that part of her is getting steamrolled by like the, you know, all that. Her infatuation with serial killers is kind of an interesting bit too. You know, in some ways I don't think they use that to its full potential. In other ways I think it's right exactly where it needs to be. So she's a tough character to make recommendations on, but, you know, the concept and the execution feels pretty solid overall.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Behold!
Nekomaru Nidai. It's hard not to say his name without like growling it. This big dude is our ultimate sports coach. So yeah, he basically, to go into his free time events first, he's diagnosed with, I think it's like a heart problem of some sort. And so he's maybe going to live to 20, is what the doctors tell him. While he's in the hospital receiving treatment, essentially he's away from all of his peers. He's kind of looked down upon and kicked around, which is, you know, thematically similar to a lot of other characters here. By the way, like, I'm surprised by how many running themes we have at this point. You mentioned like the troubled families, this bullying, or like general isolation. One of the weird ones I forgot to mention is abduction, which happens like 3 times in the free time events that I can recall. Let's see. I think it was Peko and Komaeda and Sonya all mention it, like that they've been kidnapped or abducted in some form. And that's not even including like them getting abducted into the killing game. So weird. I had to mention that. Okay, back to it. Nekomaru's in the hospital. He's kind of lonely. And the person who's there with him essentially can't be there for their sports team physically, so they're coaching the team from their hospital bed, and so they're looking at the stats and essentially helping them essentially keep the team organized, and that really is like inspirational to Nekomaru. That person passes away. They actually have a name, Daisuke. I don't know if it gets brought up in the game or in auxiliary material, but in any case, Daisuke is that person. And so then Nekomaru takes up that team and essentially becomes their coach in Daisuke's place. Essentially leads them to victory and then more and more teams along the way. And in doing so, he continues to sort of train himself and bulk up and everything because he wants to be a role model for everyone he works with. And that kind of reflects into his main game character, which is, high spirits, super, like dad energy almost.
He does look like he's like 36.
Yeah, he does not look like a teenager at all. He's got fucking lightning shooting out of his eyes.
Pure electricity!
He also comes down with a case of being a robot for a little bit.
That does happen. It's quite incredible.
It's
one second
you're
on the way to the hospital in an ambulance, and on the next second you come back and you're a robot. Oh. But yeah, he takes a hit for Akane because Akane attacked Monokuma. Monokuma attacked back. Nekomaru took the hit, but it didn't result as a disqualification. He wasn't supposed to die, so essentially they bring him back in a robot body. But his character's still pretty consistent. All that changes are some functional things about how he can work in terms of like the plot. So it's like, well, okay, now he has a standby button. He can dispense soft drinks, etc. So those things are relevant to the case, not the soft drinks things, but the etc. The robot bits that matters to the case, not so much to his character, which is just like sports energy. That's basically it.
There's one more thing that Nekomaru likes to talk about.
As someone who flushes their shit every morning, I can declare
he loves to talk about having to take a shit. And it's awful.
Yeah, that's the easy fix. Just get rid of that.
Like if he did it once, I'd be like, hell yeah, my guy, speak the truth. Mm-hmm. But it's literally like every other line.
Yeah, and it's like I get it. Like you can like shitting. Like you can feel free to enjoy relief, but like it's unnecessary for this fictional character.
So much.
I'd rather just hear more of him in that.
Yeah.
But
I love
the
his
scat humor is
high
just out of
energy.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move to our Shores.
Mm-hmm.
We have Fuyuhiko Kizaru, who is the ultimate Yakuza.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Chiaki Nanami, who is the ultimate gamer. I really, really like Fuyuhiko.
Me?
Because he has a character arc. He starts off very standoffish. What's interesting about him is his free time events actually deal with the plot, because you cannot do free time events with him until Peko dies.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts off as this really, really abrasive guy who is just all about, like, I will kill someone because I can do it. Because I've killed before, and I will kill again. And his free time event basically is him like, hey, I'm sorry for being a shithead. My dad and my mom were Yakuza. I kind of grew up in this kill or be killed kind of world. And so I don't know how to have friends. And then he also is like, hey, I hate that Peko killed Mahiru. And I know that my sister died. and that sucks ass. But I don't think Peko should have killed Mahiru, because now Peko's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And my little sister, who was the ultimate little sister, which is stupid, he's like, I think she was better than me in every way, shape, and form, and it sucks that I'm here and she's not. And he even says, one of my favorite things is that as you go on, Hajime kind of like talks him about his life and like makes him reflect on his past. And he goes, Hajime, that part of you that may be missing, it's there somewhere. Because I'm able to talk to you like this, and I was able to reflect on my past, and from there I'm able to move forward. And he goes, I think I should call you the ultimate counselor. Like, he's nice to Hajime, right? Mm-hmm. And then the last one, he does a Brotherhood Cup, which is or a Sakazuki, which is normally sake, but in this case it's water, because Fuyuhiko has a really weird line where he says, he says, listen up, underage drinking is not allowed under any circumstances. I wonder if that was something to do with censorship laws.
Maybe.
Like they were joking, it's like, oh, we can have them murder each other, but we can't have them underage drink.
Yeah.
But they share it. They share a Brotherhood drink, and he basically says, and they shatter the cup, and he goes, some say shattering a cup is a bad omen, but I prefer it this way. If you break something, that means it can't be broken ever again. And then he says, we're gonna get out of here together. And it's so nice. Mm-hmm. It's really, really good.
What the hell? You're being strangely cooperative.
Yeah. We also should describe, he does have an attempted suicide, which is brutal.
Yeah.
But
and an eye patch. He gets an eye patch.
Yeah. But he, he redeems himself in the game's plot and with us.
Yeah.
He starts off with rough edges. He's basically like a really easy shit starter, which is like, no, he's just angry at everybody all the time. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I'm not going to participate in anything. But eventually then he has to, when he's drawn into it, that's where he becomes, more compelling as a character and one of the most interesting to listen to. Also, just the English delivery, whenever he says bastard, is just really satisfying. So
yeah, he also says like he's also one of the characters that swears a lot, and it fits him really well. And it's also fun when he's like, "Don't fuck with me." And you're like, "Yeah, don't fuck with Fuyuhiko." Chiaki.
Hey.
Chiaki Nanami. She was the character that we got part the way through her free time events.
I did finish reading her. I finished her free time because, boy, was that the one that made me really sad.
Yeah.
So Chiaki's the ultimate gamer, and she's also not real.
You think so?
The entire game takes place within, spoiler alert, a video game. None of the characters that die actually die. That's actually a pretty neat, interesting thing. But Chiaki is not real. The real version of her did die, and probably in the most brutal way that I have seen in the show. She basically is forced to go through a D&D-esque dungeon, and that kills her. It's pretty bad. She is the like co-op partner of this one, sort of like how Kyoko is in the first game.
She's got strong main character energy, yeah.
Yeah, she is the one that assists you in a lot of the investigations. Her character outside of the cases is a little dull, but in the cases she's very compelling. She's very logical, and she kind of sticks with it a lot more. She's a fun character. And in her last free time event, she basically just says, "Hey, when you leave here, don't forget about me," because because she knows it's a video game. She's the traitor, quote unquote. She's working with she's working with the OG cast from the first game, and she knows that once they leave, she's gonna go away. It's very sad. But it's good.
Yeah. I think the only things that might bring her down are like the occasional innuendos that they toss in with her, which
Oh yeah,
God, that's
100%.
frequent with this game across the cast, but Chiaki doesn't get away from that, unfortunately. Well, for example, like they mention in one of her free times, like they mention like, oh, it's just like Dancing Eyes, and that's like a really fucked up arcade game where like you're trying to like remove women's clothes like square by square. It's just weird. It's like you didn't have to bring that up. Like I didn't have to know what that is.
This is so in the first game they're a little bit more subtle with references. This is the time when Danganronpa just starts dropping actual names.
Mhm.
Like they mention Coca-Cola, they mention Bill Gates, they mention Ronald McDonald.
Yeah.
They're very unapologetic at this point to be like, whoa, references.
Pop culture.
Yeah, it gets old. It gets old.
Yeah. So I feel like her events are a little hit and miss, but there are some at least clever pieces of it regarding her nature as virtual. Like, one of what would have been a more tasteless line is that she trips and falls and Hajime catches her and she comments, "Hajime, you're hard," which is indicating that he's like, physical to her, and that like essentially like she's a computer program, so like that doesn't really exist conceptually. Of course it's a shitty innuendo, but like at the very least it's a hint towards like her computery existence.
Yeah
and there's a lot of those actually. Like it's just like when you look back on it, there's so many breadcrumbs suggesting that she's not of this mortal world. She also mentions Chihiro, calling Chihiro father, which we've talked about Chihiro and unpacked that in the Danganronpa 1 episode, so if you really want to hear our opinions on it, go there. In the meantime, anyways, cool. It's another like external callback to like the greater plot of the game and sort of zooming out. So neat.
Yep.
Okay.
It's good. So we're finally there
Mm-hmm.
to the worthy category.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Up here we've got Gundam Tanaka and we have Ibuki Miyoda. So
They're fun. They're just fun.
Not just myself, but you actually brought up how splendid my subordinates are.
they're just good. These are two characters that we did finish the free time of when we were playing the game originally, and we're so glad we did. The fun is just, that's honestly it. They're almost like not super interactive with your main characters. Like they don't like they aren't, they're side characters totally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and maybe become more significant with other side characters later, but like for the most part they're kind of loners. They're not like your main go get 'em cast. Even like Ibuki, who does get killed off, like she doesn't do a whole lot before that happens. She gets to host a rock concert, which is really fun. And then poof, she's over. But in the meantime, their dialogue is so earnest and zany that it's just great.
Oh yeah. Like Ibuki is basically just the Talol's random character.
Pointing!
Which is funny because she's like the light music club, ultimate
Yeah.
light music club member, or whatever,
Yeah. And she's like a metal singer. She's super upbeat, super positive. They kind of stay away from innuendos with her. Occasionally, she'll say them.
Yeah, which I can appreciate at least for like the women love women energy that she brings to the table. Yeah.
But I think Ibuki's main like worthy category is just she's fun. She's goofy. I know Brantley and some of our other friends like her a lot more than I do personally, but I'm not gonna argue with it because I get why people like Ibuki.
Yeah, free time definitely helps a lot with her, because she basically just fucks around with you, but each time it's her sort of like coming up with something tangential to music. It's like, well, music isn't really about technique or anything, it's about unification. It's about that we can all kind of like stick together and make something happen in the moment. To Ibuki, it doesn't make sense, like, given that everyone's going to change over time, it doesn't make sense to, like, you know, hinge everything on, you know, this long-term plan. You just have to make it happen in the moment, because people will change inevitably. And so she just enjoys fucking around with you.
It's good.
And
She's
fun. Eventually, the end of her free time events cause her to stop using third-person language for a bit. She stops referring to herself as Ibuki, and instead, you know, it starts saying, like, I and you, and basically, you know, describes, like, you know, hey, this moment matters, and what matters is we're together. And so that theming is just really interesting for her kind of talent and her kind of character. It's way different than what I would have planted Danganronpa to do with a musician, right? And it still fits. So fantastic. And outside of free time, she's just really fun. She's almost too blissful in the sense that, like, she doesn't really get in anybody's way. Sometimes she gets a little freaked out by conflict, but, you know, she's really like an aggressor. She just wants everyone to be friends, and that's like if you like wholesome characters, then then she's totally in there for you. Okay, Gundam. Gundam's a delight.
Be happy!
Gundam's the opposite. Gundam is like darkness and, you know, pentagrams and hell and everything like that. Gundam Tanaka is the ultimate breeder. He breeds hamsters. There's 4 of them. Let's see if I can remember their names off the top of my head. There's Jumpy, Champy, those are the ones I always remember. Something Z, and shit, I don't remember the other 2, but he's got 4 little hamsters, and they're drawn in a sprite, and it's really cute. They basically, like, hide out in his muffler. So Gundam is the ultimate breeder, but he's ultimate scene kid too. Like, he's like ultimate, like, goth almost. He just is constantly speaking in these, like, tirades over, like, darkness and death, and he's, like, seriously convinced he can cast spells and shit. Or at least that's what he's projecting.
Real quick, his Dark Devas are Sandy, Jumpy, Magazi, and Champy.
Yeah.
And he loves them, and I love them too.
Yeah. There are some kind of sad moments where, like, he'll kind of say, like, well, fuck you guys, I have my hamsters. You know, it's just it's a little bit pathetic, but it's very honest, you know, at the same time. And yeah, he's just very lovable.
He also has the best execution, I think.
Yeah.
It's super goofy. Before we'll talk about it when we talk about the cases, which we'll probably move on to next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But in any case, he's a fun character. And your free time events, it ends with you holding hands. I just think that's the cutest shit.
He's like, I need to share power.
Yeah.
Sure, Gundam. Sure, man.
Yeah.
Cast your impure votes for Gundam Tanaka!
That's obviously a fan service moment.
Oh, it's great. When we played this game, I voiced all the characters out loud, and every time Gundam was on screen, I was like, oh, fuck, yes. Because it's the most ridiculous things to say.
Maybe if we ever get a following on Twitch, we can have you recast you as all the characters of Danganronpa.
Dude, that's what fucking, like, Tumblr was made for. That's a thing already, and there's already people who do that. They'll make blogs that are like, you know, Ask Gundam Tanaka, and it's just someone who's doing a Gundam Tanaka impersonation, and people send them questions, and they give responses voiced as the character.
That's fun.
So we've been beaten to it.
So let's talk about cases, because, boys, this is going to be a long episode, but I'm okay with it.
Oh god, yeah.
So everyone comes to the island. I'll speed this one up. Everyone comes to the island, and they're like, oh man, we gotta be friends. Umami is turned into Monami by Monokuma, and they're like, alright, kill each other. So the first person that is murdered is the ultimate imposter, who is pretending to be Byakuya. Essentially, they have this big old feast, and they drew straws to clean up, right? Yeah. Okay. And so because they draw straws, Komeda's like, aha, I'll use my ultimate luck to draw the short straw. And he plays it off like, ah, man, I didn't get to do it. Oh, pooey. But in reality, he does this to plan the murder. And the murder was essentially getting Taro to think that he was going to murder someone, so that Taro killed the ultimate imposter. It's actually really cool. And it's actually a very good trial. I think that this game has the most interesting trials, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has the worst plot reasons for murder.
Yes.
So just like the first game, you have your little mini games that you do. You have the panic talk action, or the what do you call it, the rapid fire debate.
Yeah.
That you have Logic Dive, where Hajime rides a skateboard through a virtual obstacle course. It's super stupid.
Yeah. I'll talk about all the gameplay stuff at the very end. Let's save that, because I can just lighten around it.
I do want to say that Hangman's Gambit is called Improved Hangman's Gambit.
That makes my skin crawl. I forgot that that's actually in the name of it. Yeah. Or at least that's what. Yeah. Oof.
So essentially that kind of kicks off that Komeda's kind of a shithead, and it's pretty upset. And then the second one is the death of wow, what's her name? Holy cow. Mahiru. Holy cow. I was mixing like 8 names. The death of Mahiru, committed by Peko. This one's pretty standard. So you spend a lot of time thinking that Fuyuhiko's the one that killed him. And Peko pretends to be a serial killer for a little bit. Named like Ultimate Justice. As a way
that
to
part's
like...
dumb.
It's dumb. It basically
it
only
just
exists.
goes around in a circle, because she pretends like she's a serial killer, and then but it's like, but you're still admitting murder, so nothing's fundamentally changing here. It's just padding.
So but like the murder motive is fine. Peko wanted to kill someone to make Fuyuhiko happy. And then when she's executed by a bunch of robots, and like Fuyuhiko tries to stop it, and then that's where you get the eye patch. And then the third one is terrible. The third case is really bad. So this is the double murder. They kill Ibuki and Seoji. Now what's wild about this one is that the motive is through what they call the despair disease. So essentially no one was going to kill each other unless they forced them to kill each other. And so basically everyone got this despair disease where they started acting weird. So like Komeda acted a little bit more weird. He was basically the same. I can't remember who else got infected with it.
Ibuki did, where she'd just follow orders no matter what you told her.
Right.
And then the culprit in this case, Mikan, also gets it.
And Mikan
Akane also gets it, and she just becomes a sobbing mess, which is not much different than some parts of the game. Anyways, let's continue.
I really like that we forgot what Akane does during this one, because we talked about how we forget what she does throughout the entire game. So Mikan, this is kind of where Mikan's character becomes like hella problematic, because not only do we see a bullied individual who has just had the entire world attack her, she doesn't get any character development because she dies, and she didn't even kill anyone because of a reason. She killed someone because she was infected with the despair disease, which gave her actual personality in the real world, because everyone, this is kind of where they start to get hints that this isn't a good game, like a real world. And like Monokuma has constantly been saying, it's a game, because it's an actual video game within the video game. And Mikan doesn't get any development, and she doesn't even kill, like, it would have made sense if she killed Seoji, because she's like, I hate Seoji, she's so mean to me. But she killed Ibuki first, and then Seoji.
Yeah.
It's not good, and the problem that Danganronpa 2 has with its cases is after the first 2 cases, everything is forced. They are forced to kill. They are forced to do this. So
not
you
in
lose...
Danganronpa 1, but Danganronpa 2 and 3 start running out of ideas really quickly, and particularly 2. 2 starts forcing right away, and then 5 shakes it up.
And so you get that where you get that case, which is literally like, hey, they were infected with a weird disease, and it caused them to kill. So like,
and I'd like to slip in that, like, if they didn't have the disease involved, but instead Mikan gets back her memories of being a remnant of despair, great, then sure, that's, it's still not great because it's so divorced from the rest of her character, or otherwise just implies like a circle of abuse, which is shitty, because then that's not solving anything. It's just kind of upsetting and sad. But in any case, they took the worst possible option, which was that she wasn't even in control, and then she murdered someone.
And her execution is like she flies off on a missile that's shaped like a syringe. It's not a good one. It's and like Taro got like shot with like a helicopter, and then like dunked in a volcano. The executions in this are really weird, and it's because it's not the real world. And then the 4th case has the worst lead up. You are in a fun house, and no one can have food or water until someone murders someone. Yeah.
It's as forced as it possibly could be.
And there's no logical way that you can solve it. And what's interesting about this is during this time, you do play a little bit as Komeda. And you do like an escape the room puzzle. And it's really neat because they basically say, hey, at the end of it, you get to play Russian roulette. And if you win with 5 bullets in the chamber, you get to know the secret. And Komeda, being the lucky student, is like, well, I'm not gonna die from this. And he doesn't. And so Komeda learns about it. And he learns about not only how like the fun house is set up because it like rotates or something stupid, but he also learns that they're in a video game. And he also learns that there's a traitor. And so he starts shit-starting, and Gundam and Nekomara fight, and Nekomara dies, and Gundam's the killer. It's stupid because it was like,
inconsequential. Someone had to die.
Yeah. But Gundam's death is hilarious because like he's about to get trampled by animals, and he puts the Dark Devas away, like, and he like pets them, and they like cry. And then as he dies, he like appears in the sky. It's super silly. I really liked it.
That one, to me, that one felt like they're like, ah, God, how are we going to kill this character?
This, too, must be the will of causality.
It felt like everyone on staff was like, well, we don't want to do anything too mean, so like let's put him up in heaven and everything, like, or show the hamsters are okay. They have to be okay,
And I think they mention the hamsters later, like they mention that they're like feeding them and stuff.
Sonya takes care of them,
which is cute because Sonya kind of liked Gundam. There was like a little like she crushed on Gundam, and like Soda found that like sad, but it's fun. It's fun. So the last case, in my opinion, is one of the best uses of ultimate luck ever. It's stupid. It's so fucking bizarre. But I got it. I remember I called it. I didn't call who was the murderer, but I called how it played out.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, you find Komeda set on fire, and then you put it out with like fire extinguishing grenades. But he was, and then when you see that he's not on fire, he's been impaled on a spear like multiple times. But he didn't die by that. He died by being poisoned. So no one actually killed Komeda. He went to kill himself, filled a gas canister with poison, because he wanted to find out who the traitor was. He wanted everyone to know who the traitor was. And so he knew that the traitor would get executed based on them killing Komeda. But he couldn't get anyone to kill him unless it was by luck. It's very, very stupid, but it was great.
Yeah, so to walk it back, he needs to tell everyone that this is a simulation, and he can do that if he exposes the mole. How do I expose the mole? Well, I'll trust that my luck will result randomly that their thrown fire extinguishing grenade will be the one that kills me, and that's it. You know, essentially, he does a Russian roulette on himself, but he doesn't pull the trigger. Each member of the living cast at that point has a bullet in the form of what they think is, you know, a fire extinguishing grenade, which will save his life. Yeah. Whew. It is the most...
And I believe there are 6 people remaining at that time.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's just such a good callback to the actual Russian roulette and then his ultimate luck. It's really good. It's so good. It's dumb, but it works within this game's rules. And it's like the only time that anyone, like, even in like the first one and the third one, it's like the only time that anyone actually abuses their talents besides maybe Leon.
Yeah, it's also, but do you count Peko? Because she's got a sword. No, but she uses a bat to kill, so never mind. Yeah. She gets to use the sword to like reach a high window, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'd say it's the best case in the game.
It's one of the best cases in the series. Like, honestly,
because it also gets it's also pulling off the whole like, let's beat the system, you know, let's make a murder where you can't actually determine who the killer was. I think you find a way technically to determine that it's Chiaki. But
it had to do with because at that point you're not trying to find out who the murderer is, because nobody knows the murderer. You're trying to find out who the traitor is. So when you look at who the traitor is, you find out that it's Chiaki. And it's good. And then the last case is the survivors, which at this point is Hajime, Sonia, Soda, Akane, Fuyuhiko, and
that's it. Because it's 5.
That's it. Yeah. And they're like, hey, and they're like, you're in a video game. All your friends are technically still alive, but they won't regain their consciousness unless you all give back into despair, because you find out that this video game was created by the Future Foundation and Makoto Naegi as a way to deprogram the remnants of despair who are following Junko and Oshima. And Junko comes back as a giant program. It's real dumb. But and so essentially they're given the choice. I will resurrect everybody, but they'll remain remnants of despair and I'll have control of them. Or you guys can vote to go back to the world and they'll remain trapped in the video game. And of course they all remain, they say, hey, we'll go back and we won't give in to hope, and Hajime becomes ultimate hope. It's fine. It's kind of like a shoehorned ending, and like there's a sequel that shows that all the characters are okay. So it's kind of nice that none of the characters died. Everyone lives. Like even the people that died in the executions because they didn't actually die. but it's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't help that entire final case is just a boatload of exposition beforehand, and it's stuff that you really couldn't piece together. Like, here's we should elaborate something. Grant called that this game was taking place in a simulation from the word go.
Oh yeah, it was.
There's a line where it talks about looking up at the sky, and that something felt either unfamiliar about it, or
Hajime said someone is watching us.
Yeah,
and
he feels like someone's watching
sky.
us. Yeah,
and I go, I bet they're in a simulation. And
yep,
I was just firing from the hip.
I just bit my lip.
And to be fair, I fired from the hip and also guessed V3's twist, but I never actually believed I got V3's twist until the very end. This one, I was on board the entire time, and when it started glitching out, I was so excited.
Yeah. I didn't predict it the first time I went through this game, when I first watched it. And I was pretty upset when they did the whole, like, oh, it's a virtual reality world. I was mad. So I'm glad that Grant got at least some satisfaction out of it.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think it's. I mean, I like that some of the. I liked that Ibuki and Gundam lived. Like, not gonna lie, big fan of that. But yeah, it wasn't. It kind of removes the agency of the game without actually removing the agency. I like, because you're like, it removes at the very last second, and it feels kind of meh. And it doesn't make you think about anything. You're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it kind of farts into the end. I also just kind of hate digital Junko. They bring her back.
Oh,
like
God,
one of the reasons
bad.
One of the reasons I appreciate Hajime is that he's not Makoto. So just to have, like, oh, it's Junko again, feels really lame. And then having the Future Foundation comes back just feels like, oh, you're here to save us from this remaining cast we have. By the way, how do you feel about the surviving cast?
So I think that they are. I really like the surviving cast. I really do. I love Fuyuhiko. I like Soda enough. I like Sonya. I think that they work well with each other, and they are also the oddest people to be working with each other. And I dig that. I dig that. Yeah. I wish Akane was someone else. I wish Akane was Mahiru. Yeah. I feel like there needed to be someone who is a little bit more confrontational with the cast, because Akane's confrontational with everybody, but not in a serious way. She's just like, I want to fight. I wish Mahiru would have survived. I think Mahiru, but other than that, I really like the final cast.
Yeah. We are up from the previous game from 50% to 80% of the final cast having some dead friend to avenge. So Kazuichi's the only one who doesn't have, like, a dead person to be fretting about. But Hajime has Chiaki, Fuyuhiko has Peko, Sonya has Gundam, Akane has Nakomaru. So, like, everybody's got somebody. And so that'll be a trend that just continues on. That functionally works, right? It's on, like, a technical scale to the writing. It's effective. I personally feel like I miss a little bit of the resolve that the first game's cast had. They felt a little more glued together because they were the main characters, right? You could see it coming almost. Here you have oddballs, and so that's more novel, but it's also a little more, like, disoriented.
I think they have their pros and cons. There's definitely some pros of having the oddballs and cons from not having the main characters. Yeah, because you do lose that drive. So yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that's a good way to look at it.
I do think that it still works, as much as it's like, I like this cat better. I wouldn't change it, because this is how it has to go for this plot. For the plot to be hey, who's ultimate despair, and oh, we are all ultimate despair, we're all remnants of despair, and that like we don't get to be the hope cast yet. You couldn't just pull Danganronpa 1 again. Danganronpa 1 has like essentially this group of people who have been forged through this like fire of fuckery the whole time, and so it's like all the people who have already sort of put their foot down. But this is a cast of people who's essentially ready for a fight, but not so much together as much as is I just want revenge for my one friend I've got,
Yeah.
And that needs to happen so that everyone stays suspicious up until the end. Danganronpa 1, you already know that the game is being rigged and everything, and so it wouldn't make much sense to be like, hey, by the way, which of these cast members do you suspect is the mastermind? You're supposed to outright reject that. Just like, no, all these people are my friends because I have hope. But that's not the case here. You're supposed to keep suspicion up until the end because they are remnants of despair, technically. And I think that's interesting. They all have like these sort of flighty aspects that make them suspicious. So, Hajime is kind of pessimistic when shit goes bad, and that like crawls out of him. Komaeda gets the worst out of him, especially. Kazuichi's like a constant time bomb through the entire plot, where he just always wants to escape. He's always sort of a baby in that sense. Fuyuhiko and Akane both are like outwardly describing they're ready to kill someone, at various points. Sonya has the whole serial killer obsession going on, which kind of works as like a mastermind trait. So for this plot, they make a lot of sense as a surviving cast. Their gamble in the end is about, can we overcome our dark tendencies? Whereas the gamble in the first game is, can we overcome what the world became? And so it needs to be about the characters. It's not so much about what's out there, it's about what's in us. So it makes sense. Although they don't stick to me quite as much, I appreciate what's been written to sort of form this ending. The one maybe one of the downers to this is that Hajime doesn't really entirely get to be the hero in the end. Instead, the Future Foundation and Makoto are the ones who bring hope back into the picture. Hajime is sort of accepting help from them, and then that is what saves the day. So there's some agency that's removed, but again, maybe that's just me nitpicking because I'm not sure why exactly I like the main cast more. Yeah.
Yep. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Danganronpa 2. Cases and characters.
Yeah, I've got some minor notes I want to make that just didn't fit in anywhere else.
Fair.
So to speak like in an overview, and if you have like final thoughts on the game as well, we can give them now. Final thoughts. Like I said, it's my least favorite, which maybe sounds weird because we've been praising this game a lot. I can't exactly describe why. It's just,
That's like a crappy game.
I have mixed feelings. I really liked that game a lot.
I want to play games about riddle-solving professors or collecting cute monsters.
Maybe it's because the first game is a little simpler and more nostalgic, and then the final game, well, we'll get to that. In the meantime, I think this game being so much a sequel and so derivative of number one hurts it a little bit. Monomi as a follow-up to Monokuma is kind of interesting, but she spends so much time just getting beat on that it just doesn't really add so much, content as it is just like pity points. It feels really forced. It doesn't really add much substance. The game will lampshade the fact that it's very much a sequel, and that ties into it all being a simulation, but it's just not as enjoyable for me, in like the holistic sense. I like that the characters have B-sides that you can think about. You know, they're remnants of despair aspects. And I think there are, like, cues to this. Like, so I want to assert, this game does have really, you know, decent bits of writing in there. So, you know, the impersonator's lack of trust of other people feels like it's something that could grow into despair. Hiyoko tries to set up a shrine, and it's all fucked up and, like, evil looking. You know, let's see, Fuyuki Hiko's death threats and then, like, suicide attempt. Ibuki's death metal coming out. You know, that's kind of, again, like, these things that's like, this is awfully, you know, dark for who I thought this character was. You know, Akane's attack on Monokuma. It's these things that sort of signify that these characters are capable of, you know, this darker lifestyle, even if they don't follow through with it. Maybe, like, the blunt force version of that is Komaeda, who is just literally a cartoon psychopath, which you know, is not great. But it gets the job done. And it's things to think about, you know? I can't really say that about Danganronpa 1. Yeah. It's also more trashy.
Yes.
So, lightning round of that. You know, there's there's like the swimsuit bit in the second, you know, chapter, which is just kind of like, okay, that's gonna happen. I think what sort of makes all the innuendo and stuff, like, almost not so bad in comparison is that in this game, the mega fan service scene, which Danganronpa had one and this one has one too, this one, you can't avoid if you have the item that activates it, which is the man's nut. So if you got this item randomly, then you're going to get a fan service scene, and it's terrible. It's, you know, underage characters, and, you know, it's a bath scene between Mahiru and Hiyoko, and it's awful. I resent that they don't let you opt out of it. Thankfully, they let you opt out in Danganronpa V3, because they still do that shit in that game. But yeah, it's just trashier. We mentioned there's a lot more vulgar characters in this game. There's a lot more, like, weird sort of fetishy feeling things that are kind of slipped in. Maybe that's just my vibe of it, but yeah, it's to say that there's higher highs and there's lower lows in this game, I think.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Okay. My last thing that I couldn't fit anywhere else, and I have to share it because I thought of it today. Hear me out. I had an epiphany about Komaeda, and I want to praise the author for what he's done here. I feel like Komaeda is the first time that I've really enjoyed the equivalent of a bless this mess mom.
What?
So here we go. So Komaeda as a character, on one side, thinks he's like God's greatest gift to Earth, right? Like, I'm gonna make all my friends shine based on how shitty I am and inconsequential I am in comparison. But he also puts way too much stock in how much effort he's putting in on everyone else's behalf. He's constantly disappointed in you, and he's sort of like, nagging about like, oh, you're not reaching your potential after everything I've done for you and all this stuff. He's super controlling, but he's also like incredibly supportive depending on the occasion. It's like unconditional love and never-ending disappointment with him. It has this incredible soccer mom feel to me. I don't know if it's just me.
No, it's true. It's dumb. I hate that you thought that. I
Me
can't
too,
say
bud.
I can't say you're wrong. I like Komaeda. Out of all the shit starter characters, I think he's the most fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just to agree with you essentially. I think that this game has higher highs and lower lows too. But it's still I never got to the point of comfortability that I had in Danganronpa, and I never got to the point of just absolute balls to the wall batshit stuff that Danganronpa V3 has. I also didn't say goodbye to despair, and if a title lies to me, I'm pissed.
Bye all of Danganronpa.
Bye all of Danganronpa.
I'll get there.
So yeah, so that's my kind of final thoughts. I think that the themes of this one are far separated from the actual gameplay. Especially with how good the themes are in Danganronpa V3. So it's hard for me to be like, oh, it has this theme, because it doesn't hit the nail anywhere.
Yeah,
it has a lot of nails.
With it. Yeah. It's the Danganronpa games are always trying to do a lot of things, but
you know what the theme is? You know what the theme is, Brantley?
What is it, Grant?
Your past doesn't make you who you can be in the future. All of their free times are about their past and how it affects them. They are remnants of despair. They gave into despair prior to the Neo World program, and that's not going to affect who they are in the future. It has some pretty, it's the only game where it has a character redemption arc. That's what I can get out of it. It's super sloppy, but I mean, that's the only one I can think that's consistent.
Yeah, you did it. I don't have to. That's the theme smart. You did it. You said it for me. I just erased my notes on that. Okay. Yeah, it's literally that. I agree with everything Grant said.
I did themes. I did it.
You did it. You've always been capable of it. It's just I'm more of a loudmouth than you are. Okay. So, yeah, it's about like, despair is not naturally occurring. The systems of power which you're beneath have an effect on it, and they'll also make some cases really shitty. Yeah, great. That leaves me more time to complain about the fucking gameplay. Woo! Okay, here we go. The user interface is worse. I know this sounds petty, but hear me out. The user interface is less interesting looking. I don't like the checkerboard pattern on like the text boxes. Also, they take all the characters' names and rotate them vertically on the left side of the screen, so it's fucking harder to notice when we're flipping back and forth between Hajime's voice and a regular character's voice. Probably works better in Japanese because you can write vertically and that's just normal, but doesn't work like that in English. So, bleh. The react mechanic is out. You're out of here. Good riddance. Didn't do anything for us in the first game.
I don't even remember what the react mechanic was.
It's when some words would be purple. So the map is a lot fucking bigger now, so there's parts of it that are in 2D, which means you can just, walk even farther to where you want to go, or you can hit the skip button, which doesn't give you experience points, because of course this game still has an experience points and leveling up system. Why wouldn't it? Jesus Christ.
You also run incredibly fast.
Yeah. I personally feel like the cases are stupidly complex. In the sense that like you kind of, I couldn't pre-solve them. Or even remotely have any kind of chance to do so. That's because the characters intermingle during these like very consistently. It's stuff like Case 2 and Danganronpa 1. But it's like all the time. It's like there's always more than one person who's intersecting and causing things to happen. And so you figure out a lot of it on the way. Probably doesn't help that I misremembered a lot of these cases, and so that led me to fuck up a bunch during the cases. But anyways, what were you gonna say?
I remember a lot of times we'd be able to figure out who did it before
but not
the
how
game.
to get there.
Yes, there were a lot of times where we were like, "Oh, it's this," but how?
Mm-hmm.
The only one I don't think that we got was the Taro case, and I was just blown away by the leaps in logic they wanted you to make.
Yeah. It felt sometimes like there could be multiple answers, lines of logic that can work, and so it feels a little more sloppy in that sense. Also, these cases are way bigger. They now have to have intermissions because they're so damn long. So, the first game had cases that were around an hour-ish and would get longer along the way. Now, like, your fastest case is like 2 hours.
What was our playtime in that game?
It was like 5 hours more than whatever they have on How Long to Beat. I think it was somewhere like 55 hours.
And our first game was only like 35, right?
It was like 40, I think.
Okay.
But How Long to Beat puts it more around 35, I think, or somewhere in there, 30, I don't know. Speaking of which, there's more shit in this game, because Danganronpa loves its side modes and weird mini games and things. So now you can take care of a little Monomi Tamagotchi, and it's pointless. They have all the modes that unlock at the end, so in case you didn't spend enough time on this game, then there's more to it. I honestly don't know why all these things exist. They want you to grind this game, which is obscene to me because they already got your money and none of it's paid DLC. But whatever, it's there. If you just like being in this game, then there's a fuck ton of it. When it comes to cases, the kind mode ramps up a lot quicker. So, like in Danganronpa, I play on kind mode, by the way. Come at me.
I'm kind to Danganronpa. I won't be kind to you. Come at me.
Come fight me. I will lose. I will cry on you. Let's see. So, regularly in Danganronpa 1, they don't start giving you 5 truth bullets in kind mode until, like, the very end. They kick that shit up fast in this game. So it's almost like kind mode doesn't really exist, besides the fact that you can take a ton of hits, and make a lot of mistakes, which I definitely did. Essentially, I don't like having a lot of truth bullets. I think that's kind of... It just gets in the way, because it's like there's so many pieces of evidence that you just legitimately know have no connection to something that's being brought up. So the fact that they're just giving you more to scroll through is annoying to me. I think that's kind of poorly designed. But then, also, to make matters worse, the minigames suck ass. Practically every minigame's gotten a downgrade, despite what improved Hangman's Gambit might tell you.
I mean, it's telling me it's improved, Brantley. I don't think I cannot listen to the game.
It's very possible.
They told me I was gonna say goodbye to despair.
Yeah.
And now it's improved.
Oh God.
Explain why it's worse.
Everything's worse. So let's see. I will say, non-stop debates and the agree points, those are fun. I like those.
Sorry, I do remember that it says consent and not agree, and
Yeah,
there is a part where it's Hajime and Monokuma, and it says consent, and it is one of the goddamn funniest things ever.
Oh God. Yeah. I feel like in memory, some of the truth bullet, some of the nonstop debate stuff was just asinine. Like we just sat there like clueless as to what they wanted us to actually say because we're getting ahead of ourselves. But whatever. For the most part, it's okay. Also, the sound effects suck more when you fire on something that sounds like that hits true. It makes a debris sound, which sounds like you got the answer wrong. I don't know why they changed that from the first game, which had a really satisfying hit sound. But they did. Okay, next up. Logic Dive is a new minigame, and it's okay. it's just kind of boring. I think it's good for the game because it helps get you from place to place where there is no evidence to get you there. You could argue that that's bad case design, bad trial design, but whatever. It helps to bridge some logical gaps that otherwise would just remain like a shitty multiple choice answer or something. So I'm cool with that. It frustrates me a little bit because you can get a power up that lets you speed up and make it go faster, but there are bits later in the game that if you're going too fast, you literally can't dodge the obstacles in time based on your turning speed. So I feel like that's poorly designed.
It really is just because Brantley is just not a real good skater kid.
I held the key down, and he didn't get there in time.
You don't skate, poser.
It's true, I don't, but do you think Hajime does?
No.
Cool.
Hajime is the poser.
Now that makes me feel better about myself.
Hajime had a ripstick in middle school.
God, I like that we just are like, I hate these bully characters in this game, and I'm just bullying Hajime.
Hey, okay, so bullying fictional characters as a real person is okay. Fictional characters bullying fictional characters is not okay, because they are real in their universe.
That's a fucking scorching hot take from Familiar Territory. Okay, let's see. The other mini games are just in like a knockdown drag out match to be the absolute worst. Rebuttal Showdown is basically a nonstop debate, but you have to essentially line up your sword with words and then slash through them. It sucks because you don't get any time to change your truth blades. You can't switch to different options because if you let things pass, then you like get pushed back and potentially take damage. So if you want to swap your options, you don't get time to think about it. You have to literally sacrifice like getting hit, basically. And that's dumb. Nonstop debates don't have that. They let you just, essentially run the clock and read things first, but Rebuttal Showdown doesn't let you. They make you try to cut the answers as fast as you can, and when you cut them, then they go away instantly, and then it moves on to the next voice line, so you can't take time to read it. As I mentioned before, Hangman's Gambit is now needlessly complicated. You have to take two letters and then combine them together in order to put that letter into the sequence, and you still have to fucking wait for it to give you a letter you want. So the main problem with the first version, which was give me the letter, is still the exact same problem here. It just also now has the shoot 'em up issue of letting things travel to the corner, in which you might unexpectedly let two things collide and then blow up on you and deal you damage. It's annoying and bullshit, and even on the easiest mode I was constantly running out of focus gauge in certain segments. I'm just trying to micromanage everything, and I'm playing with this on a mouse. I feel fucking bad for anybody who would play this on a PSP. Terrible. Having to do a cursor with a control stick would be awful. So yeah, Hangman's Gambit is worse than it was before. And so finally, panic talk action, or machine gun talk battle, depending on what you want to call it.
Machine gun talk battle is so much more fun.
It's really cool. I'm sad that it didn't get translated like that. But it's now worse because the camera fucking rotates when you're trying to do a rhythm game. So you have a rhythm interface that rotates at you on a circle. So instead of having like a straight Guitar Hero track, or a DDR lineup, or like, a Beatmania or whatever other games, like where they're just like Elite Beat Agents, where they give you like icons and circles to line up. Instead, they have a 3D circle that rotates into the foreground, and that's how you have to time the button. So imagine if you took your Guitar Hero track and you like bent it into a semicircle, and then instead of hitting the end of the line, you have to hit it in the middle. And then the camera is rotating like batshit in the background, so it's just like constantly like whoa, whoa, the whole time you're trying to do a rhythm game. It, honest to God, made me feel sick. So I think it kind of takes the cake on that. for all the other issues I have with the minigames, PTA was the only one that actually made me nauseous. So fucking congratulations. Okay, we're almost out of complaints. I didn't like the escape room. It was kind of novel to have that thrown in there, but also I was so pissed off about the entire Funhouse in general and how much of an eyesore that was, that nothing was going to make that feel fun. I remember having some issues with solving the puzzles or just feeling like archaic or bad, which it didn't need to do, but they wanted to do as a callback, and it didn't help. And I think that's it. Yeah, so that's my feelings on the gameplay.
I really liked the gameplay because it made Brantley
You didn't
mad.
play it. You didn't touch it.
It made Brantley mad, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah. Hey, we did enjoy watching Hajime run at light speed.
He's
'Cause,
so
like,
fast.
Normally you're in first person, and so when they're just running unusually fast across the maps, you just have to imagine what that looks like. But now you have a button for it on the 2D maps where you can just watch this little paper cutout character just
So fast.
Oh man, it's great.
He was the ultimate track star to us because of how
Yeah.
how good he was at the infinite sprint. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Danganronpa 2.
Oh,
it
the
was
music's
fun.
great.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to
Classic.
play the game to enjoy the music. I
Classic.
constantly
Goals.
rotate between which music track is my favorite in terms of the or which game has the best music. It feels fittingly like summery, but it still has like that like club music kind of feel that Danganronpa has. So if nothing else, just go listen to the music, enjoy it. It's really good. Some favorites that aren't revisions from the first time around. Tropical Despair hits really hard when it needs to. Miss Monomi's practice lesson as a new like Monokuma theme is really fun. It's annoying in some senses, but it's also very catchy and very weird. The slowest speed song that goes to Panic Talk Action is actually a really good head bopper. I really like it compared to with the first game. It's like on par, I think. And Alter Ego of the New World is really groovy and mysterious, so there are some tracks to go look up. This is also the first time that a character from the game is credited on the soundtrack for having contributed to the composition, because of Ibuki's song that she plays during Chapter 3.
Just leave the BGM to Ibuki!
So Ibuki Miyoda is actually credited on the soundtrack, which I think is fun. I don't know why they didn't put the voice actress also on there, but in any case, it's neat to me. Masafumi Takada is a beast.
Yeah, incredible composer.
Yeah.
Just undeniably good at making bops.
Yeah.
So, do you have any hypotheticals to entertain for our new longest episode of Familiar Territory?
I do. Let's bring it home, Grant.
Let's bring it home.
Okay, so, first, you've been entered into the Neo World program. What causal behavior, habit, or life path are they attempting to rewrite out of you to prevent
Brantley.
you from ultimate despair?
Brantley, that was my hypothetical I had for you!
Oh, great! We're in sync, man.
Yeah, my apartment is a mess.
Mhm.
Now, that's not unusual, but I just cleaned it yesterday. I have the inability to keep my spaces clean, and I don't know how it happens. I put my clothes away. I did my laundry. I put my clothes away. I washed my dishes. I did this all when I got home. And then, today, I have clothes all over the floor. I got dishes in my sink. I don't know where they came from. I do not know when my mind was like, hey, just leave them there. So I would be there to keep my goddamn spaces clean.
Oh my god, I just have this vibrant image of you going into like a sudden hypnotized state, in which you take just like a cup of water and just like dump it out on the carpet. And then snap back to reality and continue doing your daily.
I mean, you lived with me for a year. And you know that, like, when I get home, like, sometimes my clothes would just be on the floor. The clothes I was wearing, mind you, on the living room floor. Because I would just start changing into, like, comfier clothes the moment I walk through the room. Now, the problem is I don't have people to tell me, hey, Grant, pick up your goddamn clothes. And so they're just all over the goddamn place.
Yeah.
So that's what my Neo World program would be, keeping my space clean.
I also like to imagine that you just have so much energy as a human being that it projects out into objects, and then they just have life. So it's not that you, like, take off your socks and forget them somewhere. It's that your socks, like have, like, an astral projection of you. You're like, I gotta move, and so then just everything escapes off of you and away from you and lands somewhere in your room. You're just like constantly, like, feeding life force into objects. Okay, mine would be probably burying myself in work. Like, I have two depressed modes. One is I'm not productive, and that's bad. And the other is I hate everything so fucking much that if I'm productive, I'll feel better. And so, yeah, I think it would be the latter. Where I get into my states where I'm just like, fuck everybody, fuck everything. I'm gonna be mad and do work, and that's gonna show them for whatever reason. I think in game this would result in like, their way of sort of trying to treat me out of it would be literally dragging me out and burying me in the sand out on the beach. And everyone would have a good laugh, and they're like, haha, now you can't go back to work. But they would also forget about me. And leave me there.
Because you are the ultimate white kid.
Yeah. Go, white boy, go. Or in this case,
okay.
Stay, white boy, stay. Okay. And finally, you have been impersonated. How do I know that the impersonator's not really you? But that would slip by everybody else, you know? What's the giveaway?
It's a good question. So I'm pretty agreeable in most professional spaces and in my public life. Like, when I work, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yeah, let's do it. And then to my friends, I'm an absolute dick. I'll still do it, but I'll tell them I won't do it. So that's how you know. They'll be like, hey, can you take this cup to the kitchen? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. Instead of, no, fuck you, as they do it. And you'd be like, that's not Grant. I also do not think that anyone can clutter up a room as quickly as I can. I mean, last time we hung out, I, like, took that, like, recliner chair, and all my shit that I brought, I didn't even bring that much. And yet that recliner chair just had all of my shit just cluttered. It's incredible. So if they can't do that.
It's a fucking superpower that gives rats and small organisms an incredibly fun adventure to trapeze around.
What is your tell that I would be able to tell that you're not being impersonated, or that you're being impersonated?
Well, none of their jokes are funny like mine. Okay, the real answer is that you would compliment my Celeste voiceover from our Danganronpa 1 playthrough, and they wouldn't be noticeably more excited compared to the compliments to the other voices that I do.
That's it.
That's a subtle one.
That is a subtle one.
Alternatively, when conversations would come up about any dime a dozen twinkish or, like, gender non-conforming anime character, their eyes wouldn't light up with, like, gender envy. So
I'll remember that, because I know there's a lot of people out there trying to impersonate you.
Yeah, one of them's been doing it his whole fucking life. My twin brother.
All right.
Back off, bitch. No, I'm kidding. I love you.
So that's all I have to say. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, if you really are my twin brother, you would have made it to the end of the recording. So, that's it.
Thank you for listening to our episode of Funfamiliar Territory about Danganronpa 2. We should be having, I don't know if this is going to come out before or after our 1 year best of compilation.
Mm-hmm.
So if it isn't out, it'll be out. If it is out, go watch it. The next show we're going to be watching is a continuation of our Symphogear saga. We'll be watching Symphogear AZX, which so far has been...
Is it AZX or is it AXZ?
That's a good question.
Symphogear's names are so weird.
Well, what's great is they remove... It's AXZ, and then the fifth season is like AY or something stupid. So yeah. So be on
the last
lookout.
season is just like a keyboard
It's
key
XV.
smash.
It's XV.
It should just be like with a semicolon in there.
So we'll be doing that.
Yeah, I think the plan of action is I'm gonna do our 1 year anniversary compilation. That'll come out first. Then this episode will come out, but that episode will also have its bit in the compilation if I can fit it in there. So we get an even 32 episodes to cram in, and then after that we'll do Symphogear XZ.
Yeah. And so if you liked what you listened to, feel free to like, subscribe, comment. We have a Twitter, at Familiar Territory 2. It'll be a link in the description. So follow us, or don't. We are not your dads.